Sweetie Candy Vigilante, issue number 6, Gumballer. As the new Sweetie Candy Vigilante shop is getting ready to open up for their first day, they are getting ready and they notice that their social media has exploded with over 500,000 subs and they are verified. Sweetie now opens the door and says, "Good morning, Gumdrops. I am so happy you are here. I have been waiting so long to finally meet you. And it's just so nice." And as the crowd says, "We love you, Sweetie." And she says, "I love you too. And on behalf of myself and my sweet family, I just want to say, life's sweet, New York. Don't be salty." Now, as the shop builds up with Patreons, their social media hits 1.5 million subscribers. And everyone is buying candy necklaces, pixie sticks, and they're getting them signed by Candy Wolf and Pixie. Meanwhile, the detectives are talking with the lab to see what that mystery substance was on Scarvy, the guy without his head. They come to a conclusion that it's sugar and cherry juice. Now they think it's time to go over to the ice cream bunny bar to see what's going on over there. Not knowing to them that Sweetie has turned it into Sweetie Candy Vigilante. And as the cops walk up to the shop, Candy Wolf says, "Looks like we got some more customers, boss." By customers, I mean cops. Candy Wolf says, "I'm sorry, we're closed. We open up tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow? No, thank you." And as the detective says, "Good evening, sir. I am Detective Kyle Jacks. I am with the NYPD. I would like to have a word." Candy Wolf now looks up and says, "Boss?" And then Sweetie puts her hand on his shoulder and says, "I'll handle this. It's just fine and dandy as candy." She says, "Welcome to Sweetie Candy Vigilante." And the detective says, "I'm sorry, miss." And she says, "Sweetie." He says, "Sweetie." She says, "Yes, I am not miss. I am Sweetie." And then the detective says, "Oh, okay, Sweetie. I'm Detective Kyle Jacks of the NYPD Homicide Division, and this is Detective Ivory Reyes and Officer Brady. We're looking for the owner of this." And Sweetie cuts in and cuts him off and says, "Sweetie Candy Vigilante, there is no bar." She says, "There is no bar here, detective." He says, "I see that, miss. Sweetie, is the owner here?" She says, "Yes." Well, can I speak to the owner?" She says, "Yes. What is it you want to talk to me about?" And now Candy Wolf says, "Yeah, dude, you are talking to the actual boss." The detective looks at her and says, "So you are the owner of..." And then Pixie yells, "Sweetie Candy Vigilante!" And Pixie looks at the detective and says, "Detective Jax, I am Sweetie. I am the owner of this sweet shop." Now the detectives are confused, wondering if they're in the wrong address. But the deputy reassures them that they are in the right address. This is the bar called Ice Cream Bunny. They are confused. This is a candy store. And Sweetie winks her eye and says, "Sweet shop, detective. It was the Ice Cream Bunny. But now..." And the deputy looks at her and says, "Let me guess. Sweetie Candy Vigilante?" And Sweetie yells, "Yes, it's our new shop." And the detective cuts in and says, "Miss." And Sweetie leans over to him and says, "Sweetie, Detective Jax." He looks down on her and says, "Sweetie, we're investigating a double homicide." And she responds back to him, Homicide times 2? Oh my, that's not nice at all. And now the detective says, no, it is not. We're conducting an investigation of a homicide that involves a victim who listed this address as his prior place of employment. We're in possession of evidence that confirms the victim was last recently the owner of this bar. And now Sweetie looks at him and says, it's not a bar, it's a sweet shop, detective. And the detective is like, well, I can see that. Sweetie now holds the candy in her hand and she says, would you like a fizzy bang? That's a berry blast off. They explode with flavor made from 5 different sweet, fresh berries. They have a fun burst coating made with all natural secret ingredients. And as the deputy puts it in his mouth, secret ingredients, wow, he says, taste soft and hard all at the same time. It's the most awesome thing that I've ever had. So, what is the secret ingredient? And now Sweetie says, I can't tell you. It wouldn't be a secret. As Sweetie now offers a fizzy bang to the female detective, she responds back to her, no, I'm good. I'm more of a savory type of gal. And I don't have that much of a sweet tooth. And now Pixie says, how unfortunate. The female detective says, yeah, just not a big fan of berry flavored rocket ships blowing up in my mouth. The main detective now says, thank you. We're good with all the sampling. I appreciate your time, Miss Sweetie. I have a few questions. The victim's name was John Skirvnick, known around this neighborhood as Scurvy. And now Sweetie looks at him and says, I don't know who this is, and I do not know the name of the prior owner of this property. The sale and the transfer of the deed was handled by my attorney, Mr. Shark. And the detective says, Mr. Shark? Yes, my attorney, Mr. G. Shark, ESQ. He handles all my administration affairs. He's got the sweetest tooth in the business. And now Pixie says, and the sharpest. And Candy Wolf looks at her and says, well, that's up for debate. And Pixie says, so bear versus wolf versus shark now? Sweetie now says, it sounds like some naughty business, Detective Jax. If you check out the county clerk, that I am the owner of this shop. Mr. Shark filed the paperwork and obtained the proper permits before we did any major restoration. It's no longer a bar. Now it is Sweetie Candy Vigilante. And we're here to do good work. I am dedicating to make this neighborhood sweet again. And now the detective says, yes, of course, I did that with the county. The owner's last name is Kane. Are you Miss Kane? And she says, yes, but please call me Sweetie. Oh, I really do appreciate you taking the time to answer a few questions. The victim appears to have no family or next of kin, and we're at a full stop on what happened to him. And the detective says, it sure is. Again, thank you for your time. If you think of anything, contact me. I will. And I really must be closing now, detective. And now, as the detectives drive off, she says, so they're new to the neighborhood. Did everyone in this store just arrive from Planet Birthday? Or was I getting a cavity just listening to her? I hope that she has a good dental plan for all of her employees. And is it just me? Or is it always snowing around this part of town lately? And is that tree alive? Did it have eyes or was it just ornaments? I felt like it was just staring at me. And now, as our main detective pulls out the candy from his bag that he got from Sweetie, they ask him, "What did you get?" And he holds up a cherry bomb. He says, "It's a red chocolate covered cherry." And he looks at it closer and he says, "It's a cherry." Now Sweetie walks back into her shop and holds up the card to the Christmas tree tinsel and says, "File this card." And Tinsel burns it down with his light bulb. Now Sweetie gets a phone call and she stops and yells at everybody, "Gummy, Tinsel, close up. Honey just text me. And Gummy, make sure everything is locked. We have to get to the factory. CW, get the card." And he looks at her and says, "Is everything okay, boss?" And she yells, "Get the car!" And as they leave on the snowy New York streets, they arrive at the factory. Sweetie steps out of the car as Bart Bulgare walks up to her and she yells, "Bart Bulgare!" End of Sweetie Candy Vigilante, Volume 1.